What's up, writers? Today, we are going to be making sure that our writing has the correct amount or ratio of brick to mortar in that book building that we're making. But before you do that, we need to make sure that we have a draft of at least one chapter. So, if you haven't done that yet, get that draft of a chapter done. I don't mean the teen activism chapter. I mean any chapter but that one, because you already wrote your teen activism chapter. It's the essay that we wrote before. So go get that done and then come right back to this video when you've finished a draft of a different chapter. And just rough draft. All right, go. Okay, so as I was saying, our focus today is constructing texts that have big bricks of information. Now, what's a brick? It's used to build buildings. It used to be probably more structural things that held a building up. Now it's more for decoration. But that brick was sort of the centerpiece. It's what held it together. It was the most important part of the building. And in the same way, the information that we're putting into our chapter books, our books about teen activism or your focused topic, those bricks are like where all the details and facts need to go. And then there's something else that kind of holds those bricks together. It's called mortar. And that is the stuff like ideas that you have about your topic, transitions. And those are important, but it's today that brick that we're focusing on. We're focusing on making sure that we know all the different varieties of information that we should be including in our book. Let's check it out. So today, we're going to real quickly look at an example text called Malala the Powerful. And if you were in class, we would have read this together as a partner, and we would have made a list in partners. And I would have challenged you to find as many as I could find. So if you really want to undertake that task, feel free to find that article and see if you can find 14. If you're like, just show me, then follow along. So let's look at this article together. Loading. And we're going to look at the presentation view because that's real fancy and stuff. So what I want you to see is all of these different varieties of information. For example, right here immediately, we have a date. That's a variety of information. In addition, we have a name of a location. We have what I would call a diagram here of the world. And it shows where Pakistan is. Down here, we have a vocab word that's bolded and highlighted. I could go on and on and on. But that's the kind of stuff that we want to make sure that we're including. We want to make sure that we're including all of these different kinds of information, because that variety not only is more entertaining, but it's helpful to be taught in these different ways or to have to learn in these different ways. So let's go back at a little list that we have. So the challenge was, how many varieties can we find? And we've got 14 here. So one is explanations. You explained how something works. Maybe you explained in like your teaching voice why it's important that Malala is doing what she's doing. Okay, descriptions. Maybe we described a scene like we were telling a mini story and used some description to describe the scene of the bus that was taken over that Malala was on. Okay, quotations from texts and experts. Vocab words in bold, we saw those. Definitions, a page just for glossary. Maps, photographs, pictures, text boxes, statistics, observations, lists, and diagrams with labels. These are all awesome varieties of information, and I want you to make sure that you keep this up for your next thing that we do. So right now, we're going to take a moment to annotate our draft chapter that you either just did with me or that you had from before. And we want to see whether, when we read, or rather reread, this chapter we drafted, we want to see if we have the same amount of variety of information as we see in that example. So we're going to take a look at a text that I had just laying around, and this is what I expect to see when you're annotating. Starting here in the beginning, teen activists find problems in the world and try to solve them. I would highlight it by selecting it like I just did, and then I could click my add comment on the side, and then all I'd have to do is type in here saying, hey, I defined what teen activism is, so I'm going to write in definition. Perfect. Okay. And then I would continue doing that throughout the rest of my text. I can see right here that I used a number, 100,000 tons. Awesome. We want to make sure that we're realizing how much of our writing makes up this chunk, this brick of hard, solid information like facts, etc. And that's it. That's what we want you to do. We want to make sure that you know whether you've been doing these bricks of information. So right now, take a moment and annotate your draft before you move on to the next step. Go. All right. So the question then is, now that you've went back and highlighted chunks of information that you noticed, how could we revise to make our draft better? Well, a couple things. You could maybe notice whether you're actually using the mortar in between, like transitions or your own ideas. Or maybe you notice right now you just have a lot of your own ideas in transitions. And maybe we need to come up with more varieties of information. Like, I know, maybe we need to come up with pictures, right? Okay, I'm going to leave that up to you. How do you revise? How will you revise? The options that you have for today are revising that chapter, making sure you have a finished table of contents if you haven't done that, like 4 chapters. You might need to research more. That would be absolutely fine. We're still early into this. Remember, when we're reading and finding articles, we should be taking notes and keeping track of where we got those notes from. And finally, you might feel like, hey, I've revised as much as I feel like for now with this chapter, but I was kind of excited about this other chapter. I'm going to go write that one. Cool. Let's do it. Hopefully, by the end of today, you have at least either 2 pretty quality drafted chapters. I'm including your teen activism in one of those. Or maybe you've got one that's kind of raw, or maybe 2 really raw drafted chapters, plus your teen activism one. So you might be halfway through your book or 3/4 of the way. All those places are good places to be. At the very minimum, though, we want a raw drafted chapter, maybe a little revision, and then our teen activism chapter. Let's get to writing. And until I see you next time, happy writing.